Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a hazy, grape-scented adventure. One where you're trailing a god who's, frankly, a bit of a mess. Picture this. You're barefoot, the air heavy with dew, and a vineyard stretches endlessly before you, its vines curling like they've got secrets. The moon's too shy to show up fully, just a sliver, and somewhere in the fog, Dionysus, yes, the wine god is stumbling through his own creation, utterly lost. You're right there with him. And spoiler, you probably won't survive this without craving a glass of Merlot. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not sure how you ended up here, but the vineyard feels alive, like it's watching you. The soil's cool under your toes, damp from an earlier drizzle, and the air smells of overripe fruit and something sharper, like regret. Vines twist into shapes that don't make sense, loops, knots, almost faces if you squint. You hear a clumsy thud ahead, followed by a slurred curse. That's Dionysus, the god of wine, revelry, and apparently terrible navigation. He's not the chiseled deity you might expect. His hair's a tangled mess, his tunic stained with grape juice, and his eyes glint with a mix of mischief and confusion. You're stuck following him, because, well, what else are you going to do in a place like this? The vineyard's a labyrinth, and not the fun kind with a prize at the end. Every step you take feels like the ground shifts just to mess with you. You brush past leaves that whisper against your skin, and the grapes, plump, almost glowing, seem to pulse faintly. You're tempted to pluck one, but something tells you that's a bad idea. Like, turn into a dolphin for eternity bad. Dionysus, meanwhile, is muttering to himself, something about sacred vines and stupid mortals. You catch up just as he trips over a root, sprawling face first into the dirt. You stifle a laugh, god or not. He's got the grace of a drunk toddler. Let's talk history for a sec. Dionysus worship kicked off around 1500 BCE in ancient Greece, tied to fertility and the harvest. Temples, festivals, the whole deal. People loved this guy because he brought the party. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient texts claim his vines grew so fast, they trapped thieves mid-heist, like nature's burglar alarm. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was a homegrown god or imported from Thrace, a debate that's been raging since Plato's time. You don't care much about that right now, though, because Dionysus is back on his feet, swaying, and you've got to keep up. You're weaving through the vines, and the fog's getting thicker, like someone's cranking a smoke machine. You hear distant laughter, but it's not friendly, more like the sound of someone who knows you're screwed. Dionysus stops, sniffs the air, and declares, "This is definitely the way out." Spoiler, it's not. You roll your eyes, but there's something endearing about his confidence, like a friend who swears they know the bar's address, but leads you to a laundromat. You're starting to wonder if this vineyard's cursed, or if Dionysus just had one too many before planting it. Either way, you're in deep, and the only way out is through. A twig snaps behind you, and you freeze. Dionysus doesn't notice. He's busy arguing with a vine that snagged his sandal. You squint into the mist, heart thumping, but nothing's there. Yet, you're not paranoid, but this place feels like it's got eyes. You nudge Dionysus, who waves you off with a lazy grin. "Relax," he slurs. "It's just the grapes talking." Great. Talking grapes. You make a mental note to never drink wine again, or at least to check the label for haunted warnings. Here's a joke to lighten the mood. Why did Dionysus get lost? Because he kept chasing his own buzz. Okay, not my best, but you're stuck with me. The path narrows. and you're brushing shoulders with Dionysus now, his warmth oddly comforting despite the chaos. You spot a cluster of grapes that look suspiciously like eyeballs, and you swear they blink. You're not telling Dionysus, though he's already spooked enough, muttering about Zeus laughing from Olympus. You're starting to think Zeus might have a point. Asterisk, you're still trailing Dionysus, his unsteady steps crunching through the vineyard's endless maze, and the fog so thick, now it's like walking through a dream you can't quite wake from. The air's heavy with that sweet, fermented scent, and you're starting to feel a little woozy yourself, like the grapes are exhaling wine fumes just to mess with you. Dionysus is ahead, humming a tune that's half hymn, half tavern, ditty, and you're wondering how a god who invented partying could be so bad at keeping track of his own backyard. The vines seem to lean closer as you pass, their leaves brushing your arms like nosy strangers. And you're pretty sure this place is alive in all the wrong ways. Let's rewind to how this whole mess started. Picture Dionysus, freshly crowned, as the god of wine, standing on a sun-soaked hillside somewhere in ancient Greece. He's got big plans, world's first vineyard, a gift to mortals, a place to worship him with every sip. He's all enthusiasm, no blueprint, scattering grape seeds like a kid tossing confetti. The ground drinks them up, and vines sprout faster than you can say hangover. By dusk, he's got a sprawling, chaotic vineyard. But here's the kicker. He was already 3 goblets deep when he started. You can imagine him giggling, "This'll be epic," while planting loops and dead ends, thinking it's hilarious. Now you're stuck in his drunken masterpiece, and it's less epic and more, what even is this? You catch up to Dionysus, just as he stops to inspect the grape cluster. He squints, pokes one, and it bursts, spraying juice across his face. He licks his lips, grins, and says, "Perfection." You're not so sure. These grapes look too perfect, like they're auditioning for a horror flick. You nudge him to keep moving, but he's distracted, muttering about how these vines are his children. You're starting to think he loves them a bit too much, like a parent who lets their kids run wild and then wonders why the house is on fire. Here's a historical nugget. The ancient Greeks were obsessed with wine, using it in rituals as early as 2000 BCE, often mixing it with water to avoid, well, Dionysus-level chaos. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe texts claim Dionysus' first vines were cursed by Hera, jealous of his divine status, to twist and trap anyone who wandered in. Historians still argue whether this vineyard was a real place or a metaphor for indulgence, with no clear answer. You're leaning toward real, because the vine snagging your ankle right now feels way too personal. The path, if you can call it that, it's narrower, and you're dodging thorns that weren't there a second ago. Dionysus is oblivious, singing louder now, something about eternal revelry. You're tempted to shush him, but you're also kind of jealous of his vibe. You're sweating, your sandals are caked in mud, and the fog's making everything look like a low-budget ghost story. You hear a rustle, and your heart skips. Dionysus spins, eyes wide, and whispers, "Did you hear that?" Great. Now even the gods spooked. You both freeze listening, but it's just the wind. Or is it? You're not betting your life on it. Here's a joke to ease the tension. Why did Dionysus plant a maze? He thought straight paths were too sober. You snort, and Dionysus gives you a look like he knows you're mocking him. You shrug, "Can't help it, buddy." You're starting to notice the vines are forming patterns, almost like arrows pointing deeper into the vineyard. You point it out, but Dionysus waves it off, saying, "My vines love me." Sure, and you love stepping on Legos. You're not buying it, but you follow anyway, because turning back feels like admitting defeat. The ground slopes downward, and you're slipping on loose dirt, grabbing vines for balance. They're weirdly warm, like they've got a pulse. Dionysus is ahead, tripping less now, like he's sobering up. You're not sure if that's good or bad. You pass a stone altar, half buried, carved with grape motifs. It's old, older than the vineyard, and you wonder if this place was sacred before Dionysus claimed it. You're tempted to ask, but he's muttering again, something about proving them wrong. Who's them? You're not sure you want to know. Another rustle, closer this time. You grab Dionysus' arm, and he yelps, then laughs. You're jumpy, he says, but his eyes dart to the shadows. You're both on edge, and the vineyard knows it. You're starting to think this isn't just a bad landscaping job. Something's guiding you deeper, and it's not Dionysus. You take a breath, steady yourself, and keep moving, because standing still feels like asking for trouble. The vines close in, and you're wondering if you'll ever see daylight again. You're still trudging behind Dionysus, the vineyard's grip tightening around you like a clingy ex who won't take a hint. The fog's so dense now it's like wading through a cloud, and the air's thick with that syrupy grape scent that's starting to make your head spin. Vines curl overhead, forming a tunnel that blocks out what little moonlight there was, and you're pretty sure the path is moving under your feet like a conveyor belt to nowhere. Dionysus is ahead, his silhouette, swaying, but he's quieter now, less singing, more muttering. You catch snippets something about mortals and respect. You're not sure if he's talking to you or the grapes, but either way, you're not feeling the love. The vineyard's chaos is starting to make sense, though, in a twisted way. Dionysus, in his wine-fueled genius, planted this place to be a monument to revelry, but he didn't count on mortals poking fun at his masterpiece. Word spread to the nearby village, a dusty little place where farmers and shepherds gather at the tavern to swap stories. They've heard about the god who got lost in his own vines, and they're not exactly lighting candles in his honor. You can almost hear their laughter now, drifting through the fog rough, throaty chuckles from men who've seen too many harvests to be impressed by a deity with zero sense of direction. You're walking with Dionysus when you catch the sound for real. Distant voices, mocking, carried on the wind. He freezes, his jaw tight, and you realize he hears it too. You're close enough now to see the village lights flickering through the vines, tiny specks of gold in the haze. The villagers are out there, probably leaning on fences, pointing at the vineyard and saying, "That's the god who can't find his own backyard." You feel a pang of sympathy for Dionysus, a god, sure, but getting roasted by mortals. Has to sting. You nudge him, trying to lighten the mood, but he's staring at the ground, his hands clenched. "They'll see," he mutters, and you're not sure if it's a promise or a threat. You're just hoping it doesn't involve turning anyone into a grapevine. Or you. Especially not you. Let's toss in some history. Ancient Greek villages often held festivals for Dionysus, like the Dionysia, around the 6th century BCE, where wine flowed and plays were performed to honor him. But here's a quirky tidbit some fringe stories claim villagers once tricked Dionysus into drinking unfermented grape juice, thinking it'd sober him up. Spoiler, it didn't. Historians still argue whether these tales were meant to humanize him or just make fun of his party-hard reputation. You're leaning toward the latter, because the laughter you're hearing now feels like it's got centuries of sass behind it. A path twists, and you're suddenly out of the vine tunnel, standing on a hill overlooking the village. It's closer than you thought. Mud brick houses, a flickering bonfire, and a crowd of silhouettes. They're pointing at the vineyard, and you catch phrases like drunk god and lost again. Dionysus' face is a mix of hurt and fury, and you're wondering if you should step back in case he goes full divine tantrum. You try a joke to break the tension. Why is Dionysus the worst at hide and seek? Because he's always too sloshed to cover his tracks. He glares, but there's a twitch of the smile, like he's too tired to stay mad. You're about to suggest heading toward the village. Maybe they've got wine to calm him down, when a vine snakes across your path, tripping. You hit the dirt, and Dionysus laughs, a genuine belly-deep sound that makes you grin despite the mud in your hair. He pulls you up, his grip warm and surprisingly steady. Mortals, he says, shaking his head, always falling. You're? Tempted to point out he's been falling all night, but you hold your tongue. The village laughter grows louder, and you realize they're not just mocking him, they're daring him to show up. You're walking again, the vines parting like they're finally bored of messing with you. The village is close, but the path keeps looping, like the vineyard's got one last trick up its sleeve. You spot a kid, maybe 10, perched on a rock, watching you both with a smirk. He shouts, "Lost again, wine god?" And Dionysus flinches. You're starting to think these villagers are braver than you, or just dumber. You whisper, "Maybe ignore them?" But Dionysus is already striding forward, his eyes glinting with that godly spark you've been waiting to see. You're not sure if he's about to bless them or curse them, and you're definitely not sticking around to find out. The fog swirls, and you're back in the vines, the village lights fading behind you. Dionysus is muttering again, something about showing them all. You're not sure what's coming, but you're pretty sure it's not a group hug. The vines rustle, and you swear they're laughing too, in their own creepy, leafy way. You're just hoping you make it out before Dionysus decides to renovate this place with you still in it. Asterisk, you're still weaving through this maddening vineyard, the fog curling around your ankles like it's trying to trip you, and the air so thick. With grape sweetness you're half drunk, just breathing. Dionysus is ahead, his steps less wobbly now, but there's a tension in his shoulders, like he's carrying the weight of all those village taunts. The vines are relentless, twisting into knots that seem to mock you both, and you're starting to wonder if this place is less a garden and more a divine prank gone wrong. The distant laughter from the village has faded, but it's left a sting, and you can tell Dionysus is brooding over it, his usual swagger dulled by the sting of mortal mockery. Let's dive into why this vineyard even matters. You're trudging through the origin story of wine itself, or at least the myth that gave it a godly stamp. Picture ancient Greece, where grapes were just another fruit until Dionysus decided they could be more. He didn't just invent wine, he made it sacred, a liquid bridge between mortals and the divine. But here's where it gets murky. The Greeks weren't the only ones fermenting grapes. Evidence from Georgia, the country, not the state, shows winemaking as far back as 6000 BCE, long before Dionysus was a twinkle in Zeus' eye. So, you're walking through a vineyard that's less about firsts and more about a god claiming credit for a mortal discovery. You glance at Dionysus, who's sniffing a grape like it's fine art, and you can't help but smirk. He's not the inventor, just the guy who threw a divine marketing campaign. You're picking your way over gnarled roots when Dionysus stops, staring at a vine that's grown into a perfect spiral. He mutters, "This wasn't here before." You're not sure if he's talking to you or the plant, but you're getting the vibe this vineyard has a mind of its own. You lean closer, and the grapes on that vine? They're glowing faintly like tiny purple lanterns. You're tempted to touch one, but you remember that dolphin transformation risk and keep your hands to yourself. Dionysus, though, plucks a grape, pops it in his mouth, and sighs like he's tasting heaven. "Want one?" he asks, grinning. You shake your head hard pass on enchanted fruit. Here's a historical fact. Wine was so central to Greek culture that by 500 BCE, they had specific pottery, like amphorae, just for storing and serving it, often stamped with Dionysus' face. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some ancient texts claim the first wine was so potent, it drove drinkers mad unless diluted with water, hence the Greek habit of mixing it. Historians still argue whether Dionysus' mythical wine was a real substance or a symbol of excess, with no consensus. You're leaning toward real because the way your head's spinning right now feels like you've sipped something stronger than grape juice. You're moving again, but the path's getting weirder, looping back on itself like a bad plot twist. Dionysus is muttering about proving them wrong, and you're starting to worry he's got a revenge plan that involves more than a stern lecture. You try a joke to lighten the mood. Why's wine so hard to find? Because Dionysus keeps hiding it in his own maze. He snorts, but his eyes are distant, like he's hearing those village laughs again. You're not sure if you're his sidekick or his babysitter, but you're definitely not signing up for Wrath of the Wine God duty. A rustle in the vines makes you both freeze. It's not the wind this time, something's moving, fast. Dionysus squints into the fog, his hand tightening around a vine like it's a lifeline. You whisper, "What was that?" And he shrugs, but his casual vibe is forced. You're both on edge, and the vineyard knows it. Its leaves shivering like they're giggling. You spot a shadow dart between the vines, too quick to be human. Your heart's pounding, and you're wondering if you should have stayed with the mocking villagers. At least they had torches. You're about to suggest backtracking when the ground dips, and you're sliding down a muddy slope, vines snagging your clothes. Dionysus tumbles after you, cursing in what sounds like ancient Greek. You land in a clearing, the fog thinner here, and you're surrounded by grapes that pulse like tiny heartbeats. Dionysus scrambles up, dusting off his tunic, and says, "This is fine." It's not fine. You're deeper in the maze. The village is a distant memory, and something's watching you. You're just hoping Dionysus has a plan, because you're fresh out of ideas. You're still stuck in this vineyard, the fog swirling like it's got a personal vendetta, and the vines are closing in, their leaves brushing your skin with a creepy, deliberate slowness. The air is so heavy with that fermented grape scent. You're dizzy, and you're starting to think Dionysus' whole god of wine thing is less about fun and more about chaos. He's ahead, his tunic ripped from that slide down the muddy slope, and he's not singing anymore. His face is all sharp edges now, eyes glinting with something dangerous. The village's laughter is long gone, but it's lit a fire in him, and you're caught in the middle of a divine meltdown. You're trudging through the maze, and every step feels like you're pissing off the vineyard itself. Dionysus is done, playing nice. You watch him stop, plant his feet, and glare at the vines like they've personally insulted him. He raises a hand, and the air crackles, the grapes around you trembling like they know what's coming. Enough! He roars, and the ground shakes, sending you stumbling. Vines twist and writhe, some snapping like brittle bones, others curling back like scolded pets. You're frozen, heart pounding, because this is no drunk toddler anymore. This is a god in full tantrum mode. You're not sure if he's mad at the vineyard, the villagers, or himself, but you're definitely not volunteering to ask. You duck as a vine whips past, narrowly missing your head, and you're thinking maybe you should have stayed home tonight. The tantrum's not just show. Dionysus is tangled in his own creation, literally and figuratively. The vines he planted in that wine-soaked haze have turned on him, looping around his ankles, snagging his wrists. He yanks free, cursing, and you realize this vineyard isn't just a maze, it's a mirror of his own chaos. You're dodging vines, too, their thorns pricking your arms, and you're wondering if this is what happens when a god gets too full of himself. Dionysus, panting, turns to you and snaps, "What are you staring at?" You mumble something about just keeping up, but you're thinking he needs a timeout and a glass of water. Non-alcoholic, preferably. Here's a historical fact. Dionysus' cult was huge in ancient Greece by the 5th century BCE, with secret rituals called bacchanalia that were so wild, The Roman Senate banned them in 186 BCE for moral corruption. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe stories say Dionysus once got so drunk, he turned a rival's sheep into grapevines as a prank, only to forget where he parked them. Historians still argue whether his myths were about liberation or just glorified binge drinking, and you're leaning toward the latter, given the tantrum you're witnessing. You're not judging okay. Maybe a little, but you're mostly trying not to get squashed by a rogue vine. You try a joke to calm things down. Why's Dionysus so mad? His vines keep giving him the cold shoulder. He glares, but there's a flicker of amusement, like he's too stubborn to laugh. The vines are still threshing, but slower now, like they're tiring out. You're weaving through them, your sandals sinking into the soft earth, and you notice the grapes aren't glowing anymore. They're dull, almost shriveled. You point it out, and Dionysus mutters, "They're sulking." Great, now the vineyards got feelings. You're not sure if that's better or worse than it trying to kill you. The path opens into a small clearing, and you're surrounded by vines that look like they've given up, drooping like overworked actors. Dionysus slumps against a rock, his anger fizzling into something closer to exhaustion. You sit nearby, catching your breath, and the fog thins just enough to show a sliver of sky. You're tempted to ask what his deal is, but he's staring at the vines like they've betrayed him. You get it, nobody likes being shown up by their own creation. You're starting to think this vineyard's less about wine and more about Dionysus wrestling with his own ego. A rustle in the vines makes you tense, but it's just a bird, flapping off into the fog. Dionysus flinches anyway, and you realize he's as spooked as you are. You whisper, "We good?" And he nods, but his eyes are distant. The vineyard's quiet now, too quiet, and you're wondering if it's plotting its next move. You're not sticking around to find out. You nudge Dionysus, and he stands, brushing dirt off his tunic. "Let's go," he says, and you're hoping he means out, not deeper into this nightmare. Asterisk, you're still trudging through this cursed vineyard, the fog clinging to you like a damp blanket, and the vines seem to pulse with a quiet menace, as if they're biding there. Time. The air's thick with that cloying grape scent, but it's sharper now, almost bitter, like the vineyard's mood soured after Dionysus' tantrum. He's ahead, his steps sluggish, the fire in his eyes dimmed to a flicker. His tunic's torn, his hair a wild nest, and you're starting to think this god of revelry is more lost than you are inside and out. The ground's uneven, roots snagging your sandals, and every rustle in the vines makes your heart skip, because this place feels like it's waiting to pounce. The sky's your only lifeline now, that sliver of moonlight you glimpsed in the clearing. It's brighter here, cutting through the fog, but it's not comforting, it's disorienting, casting shadows that twist the vines into shapes that don't add up. You're following Dionysus, who's squinting upward like he's trying to read the stars, but the constellations are wrong. Or maybe you're just too frazzled to tell. You're seeing Orion's belt where it shouldn't be. And is that the Big Dipper upside down? You nudge Dionysus, pointing at the sky, and he mutters, "Stars lie sometimes." Great. Even the cosmos is gaslighting you. You're stumbling through the vines, and it's like the vineyard's rearranged itself just to keep you guessing. You're both disoriented, and it's not just the sky. The paths loop in ways that defy logic. 1 minute you're climbing a slope, the next you're back where you started, staring at the same gnarled vine that looks suspiciously like a smirking face. Dionysus kicks it, muttering something about ungrateful plants, and you're tempted to join him, but you're too busy trying not to trip. The grapes aren't glowing anymore. They're dark, almost black, and you swear they're watching you. You're not paranoid, okay. Maybe a little, but you're pretty sure this vineyard's got it out for you both. You're wondering if Dionysus' drunken planting included a clause for haunt the crap out of anyone who enters. Here's a historical fact. Ancient Greeks used stars for navigation and agriculture, with texts like Hesiod's Works and Days from 700 BCE, tying constellations to planting seasons, especially for grapes. But here's a quirky tidbit, some fringe. Myths claim Dionysus once got so drunk, he rearranged the stars to mess with sailors, only to forget how to fix them. Historians still argue whether his myths reflect actual rituals or just poetic exaggerations of wine's effects. You're leaning toward rituals, because the way the stars are screwing with you now feels like a god's bad prank. You try a joke to break the tension. Why's Dionysus bad at stargazing? Too busy sipping the Milky Way. He snorts, but it's half-hearted, his eyes still fixed on the sky. You're weaving through vines that seem to sway without wind, and you're starting to feel like you're in a fever dream. You spot a cluster of grapes that look like tiny skulls, and you're not telling Dionysus. He's spooked enough. You're both moving slower, the fog wrapping around your legs, and you're wondering if you'll ever see a straight path again. A sudden chill makes you shiver, and you realize the fog's turned icy, stinging your skin. Dionysus stops, his breath visible in the air, and whispers, "This isn't right." No kidding. You're about to ask what's up when the stars flicker, like someone's dimming them one by one. Your stomach drops, and you grab his arm, because if the sky's going dark, you're not facing it alone. He's tense, his eyes darting, and you're both listening for something, anything, but it's dead silent. The vineyard's holding its breath, and you're not sure if it's waiting for you to scream or run. You're moving again, faster now, dodging vines that seem to lunge. The stars are back, but they're brighter, almost mocking, and you're sure they're not the ones you know. Dionysus is muttering about finding the center, and you're hoping he means the exit, not some mystical vineyard core that'll turn you into a grape. You're exhausted, your legs aching, but stopping feels like giving up. You spot a vine with leaves shaped like hands, and you swear one reaches for you. You're not crazy, this place is alive, and it's not your friend. You're still stumbling through this nightmare of a vineyard, the fog so thick it's like breathing soup, and the vines are tightening their grip, their leaves brushing your skin with a slimy insistence that makes you shudder. The air's heavy, with that sour grape tang, and it's messing with your head, blurring the line between dizzy and downright unhinged. Dionysus is ahead, his steps uneven, his once fiery glare now a weary squint. The starlit chaos from before has left you both rattled, and the vineyard feels like it's smirking, knowing it's got you on the ropes. You're tripping over roots that seem to rise just to spite you, and every shadow looks like it's about to lunge. Dionysus stops abruptly, leaning against a vine that creaks under his weight. He's muttering, but it's not to you. It's to someone named Silenus, his old mentor, who's apparently not here, but looms large in his head. You catch slurred phrases like, "You'd know the way," and "always cleaning up my messes." You're piecing it together. Silenus the fat, wine-soaked satyr who raised Dionysus was the guy who taught him how to turn grapes into liquid chaos. You're hoping for some divine wisdom, but when Dionysus mimics Silenus' voice gravelly, half-drunk, it's less sage advice and more rambling barstool philosophy. You're stuck listening as he recounts Silenus' tips for navigating mazes, which boil down to follow the wine. Great. You're following a god who's following a drunk satyr's fever dream. You're weaving through vines that seem to pulse, their grapes dull and heavy, like they're sulking. After Dionysus' tantrum, he's trying to apply Silenus' advice, sniffing the air like a bloodhound, but the fog's so thick, it's like the vineyard's holding its breath. You're not sure if you're moving forward or in circles, but the ground's stickier now, clinging to your sandals like it's trying to keep you. Dionysus mutters. Silenus would say the vines sing the way out. You strain to listen, but all you hear is a low hum, like distant bees, and it's giving you the creeps. You're starting to think Silenus. Wisdom is about as useful as a paper umbrella in a storm. Here's a historical fact. Silenus was a big deal in Dionysian myths, often depicted in Greek art from 600 BC as a jolly drunken tutor who rode a donkey because he was too sloshed to walk. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe texts claim Silenus once got trapped in a vineyard himself and had to be rescued by Dionysus, which makes this whole mentor thing feel like the blind, leading the blind. Historians still argue whether Silenus was a real figure in early cults or just a symbol of wines, double-edged nature wisdom and madness in one cup. You're leaning toward madness because the advice Dionysus is following is only sinking you deeper into this maze. You try a joke to cut the tension. Why'd Silenus love vineyards? Free drinks and no exit strategy. Dionysus chuckles, but it's hollow, his eyes scanning the vines like he's expecting Silenus to pop out with a map. You're dodging thorns that seem to grow sharper, and you swear the grapes are whispering, though it's probably just the fog playing tricks. You spot a vine twisted into what looks like a donkey's face. Silenus, maybe? And you're not telling Dionysus. He's spooked enough, muttering about hearing the hum. You're hearing it too, louder now. And it's not soothing. It's like the vineyards laughing at you both. The path narrows, forcing you shoulder to shoulder with Dionysus, his warmth oddly grounding despite the chaos. He's trying to follow the hum, but it's bouncing around like the vineyards remixing it just to screw with you. You're tempted to grab him and pick a direction, any direction, but he's stubborn, waving you off with a slurred, "Silenus never failed me." You're not so sure, but you keep moving, because standing still feels like inviting the vines to wrap you up for good. The fog swirls, and you catch a glimpse of something moving, a shadow, too big to be a bird. Your heart skips, and you nudge Dionysus, but he's too busy arguing with his invisible mentor to notice. You're sliding down another slope now, the ground slick with dew, and you land in a patch of vines that feel too soft, like they're trying to hug you. Dionysus is sprawled nearby, cursing Silenus' name, and you're wondering if this vineyard's going to be her forever home. The hum's louder, almost a drone, and you're not sure if it's leading you out or deeper into the fog. You're just hoping Silenus' ghost doesn't show up to help. Asterisk, you're still lost in this suffocating vineyard. The fog so dense, it's like wading through a fever dream. And the vines are no longer just plants. They're conspirators, their leaves curling toward you with a sly, knowing touch. The air's thick with a fermented stench that's gone from sweet to rancid, and your head's spinning like you've sipped something you shouldn't have. Dionysus is ahead, his steps faltering, his face a mix of stubborn grit and creeping doubt. The hum he was chasing, Silenus' so-called song of the vines, has faded, leaving you both in a silence that's louder than it should be. Then, vineyards toying with you, and you're starting to think it's not just Dionysus' bad planning. It's something deeper, something sacred and cursed all at once. You're picking your way through a tangle of vines that seem to grow thicker. With every step, their thorns glinting like they've been sharpened for you. Dionysus is muttering about Silenus again, but now it's less wise mentor and more, why did I listen to that old drunk? You're with him on that one. Silenus' advice has you deeper in this maze than ever. You're dodging grapes that look too much like eyes, their surfaces reflecting your own tired face, and you're wondering if this vineyard's less a garden and more a trap Dionysus built without realizing. You glance at him, his tunic shredded, his eyes wild, and you're thinking he's as trapped as you are, God or not. Let's talk about these vines. They're not just plants, they're Dionysus' pride, his sacred gift to mortals, but they're also cursed, or at least that's the vibe. You're noticing patterns now. Vines that twist into spirals, others that form arches like doorways to nowhere. Some have grapes that pulse faintly, others are barren, their branches brittle as bones. You're starting to think this vineyard's Alive, not in a happy forest way, but in a it knows your fears way. Dionysus stops, touching a vine that's knotted into a perfect circle, and whispers, "This is mine." You're not sure if he means the vine or the curse, but you're keeping your distance either way. Here's a historical fact. Dionysus' vineyards were central to Greek religious life, with sanctuaries like the one at Delphi featuring grape. Motifs in art from 600 BCE, symbolizing fertility and divine ecstasy. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe myths claim Dionysus' vines could move, ensnaring trespassers who didn't offer proper libations. First think ancient security system. Historians still argue whether these stories were literal or metaphors for wine's intoxicating power, and you're leaning toward literal because the vine snagging your ankle right now feels way too intentional. You yank free, wincing, and Dionysus doesn't notice. He's too busy staring at a grape that's glowing like a tiny sun. You try a joke to shake off the creep. Why is this vineyard so clingy? It's got attachment issues. Dionysus snorts, but his eyes are locked on the glowing grape, like it's whispering secrets. You're moving again. The path, if you can call it, that twisting into a spiral that makes your stomach lurch. The vines are forming walls now, funneling you deeper, and you're sure this is no accident. You spot a vine with leaves shaped like claws, and you swear one twitches. You're not telling Dionysus. He's muttering about sacred paths and finding the heart, and you're hoping he means the exit, not some cursed vineyard core. A sudden snap makes you freeze. It's not a twig too loud, too deliberate. Dionysus spins, his hand raised like he's about to smite something, but the fog's too thick to see. You whisper, "What was that?" And he shakes his head, but his jaw's tight. The vineyard's silent again, but it's the kind of silence that screams trouble. You're both inching forward, the vines parting just enough to let you pass. Like they're hurting you. You spot a stone marker, half buried, carved with a grape cluster, and what looks like a warning in faded Greek. You can't read it, but you're guessing it's not welcome. You're sliding down a slick slope. Now, the ground betraying you, and you land in a clearing where the vines form a perfect circle, like a stage. The fog thins, and you see grapes everywhere, some glowing, some shriveled, all watching. Dionysus stands in the center, his face pale, and says, "This is it." You're not sure what it is, but your gut's screaming to run. The vines rustle, and you're wondering if this sacred, cursed place is about to show its true face. You're still trapped in this vineyard, the fog wrapping around you like a cold, damp shroud, and the vines are no longer just obstacles. They're players in a game you don't understand. The air's thick with a metallic tang, like the grapes are bleeding something stronger than juice, and your head's pounding, caught between exhaustion and the vineyard's relentless pull. Dionysus stands in the center of this eerie clearing, his eyes wide, his torn tunic fluttering in a breeze. You can't feel. The vines form a perfect circle around you, their grapes pulsing faintly, some glowing, others dark as bruises. You're not sure what he meant by "this is it," but the way the ground hums under your feet tells you it's not good. You're stuck, and the vineyard's not letting go without a fight. The clearing feels like a stage, and you're both unwilling actors. Dionysus is muttering again, but it's not Silenus this time. It's about his followers, the Maenads. Those wild women who dance in his name, drunk on wine and divine frenzy. You've heard the stories. They tear through forests, rip animals apart, and call it worship. Now, you hear them before you see them, a distant shriek, half laughter, half scream, echoing through the fog. The vines shiver, and you realize the Maenads are here, in the vineyard, their frenzied dance weaving through the maze. Dionysus perks up, like he's expecting a rescue, but you're not so sure. These women don't sound like they're handing out maps, they sound like chaos incarnate. You're trying to keep calm, But the shrieks are getting closer, and the vines are swaying, like they're dancing too. Dionysus strides to the edge of the clearing, calling out, "Sisters, your god is here." You're thinking he's overselling his charisma, because the answering cries don't sound friendly. They're wild, unhinged, like wolves spotting prey. You grab his arm, whispering, "Maybe we don't invite the party crashers?" But he shakes you off, his eyes glinting with that godly spark. You're dodging vines that seem to lunge, and the grapes are glowing brighter, casting shadows that twist into shapes women running, their hair streaming like flames. You're not sure if it's the fog or your nerves, but you're pretty sure you're screwed. Here's a historical fact. The Maenads were real in Greek culture, or at least their rituals were, with women participating in ecstatic Dionysian rites. By the 5th century BCE, often depicted on vases dancing with Thyrsus staffs. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe tales claim Maenads could summon vines to bind their enemies, a trick Dionysus supposedly taught them during a drunken bet. Historians still argue whether the Maenads were empowered priestesses or just women scapegoated for social rebellion. You're leaning toward rebellion because the cries you're hearing now sound like they're ready to tear this vineyard and you apart. You try a joke to steady yourself. Why'd the Maenads join the dance? Free wine and no curfew. Dionysus doesn't laugh. He's too busy shouting into the fog, his voice cracking with desperation. The shrieks are louder, and you see them now, shadowy figures darting between vines, their movements jerky, like puppets on frayed strings. They're singing, but it's not a song. It's a chant, raw and guttural, and the vines are pulsing in time. You're backing away, your heart hammering, because these women aren't here to help. They're here to make things worse. Dionysus seems to realize it too, his face paling as a Maenad silhouette looms closer, her eyes glinting like the grapes. The clearing's shrinking, or maybe the vines are closing in, herding you toward the center. You're tripping over roots, your sandals slick with dew, and Dionysus is shouting at the Maenads to stand down, but they're not listening. You spot one clearly now, her face smeared with dirt, her hair tangled with leaves, a thyrsus, raised like a spear. She's laughing, but it's not human, it's the vineyard laughing through her. You're wondering if this is what Dionysus worship really looks like. Chaos so raw, it swallows even him. You're pulling him back, yelling, "We need to move." But he's frozen, staring at his followers like he's seeing them for the first time. A vine snaps around your ankle, yanking you down, and you hit the ground hard. Dionysus grabs your arm, hauling you up, but the Maenads are circling now, their chants drowning out his voice. The grapes are blazing, the fog swirling, like it's alive, and you're sure this clearing's about to become a stage for something you won't survive. You're running, dragging Dionysus with you, the vines parting just enough to let you stumble deeper into the maze. The Maenads' laughter follows, and you're wondering if you've just traded one trap for another. Asterisk, you're sprinting through. The vineyard now, your breath ragged, the fog clawing at your lungs like wet cotton. The vines are a blur, their thorns snagging your clothes, and the Maenads' wild chants still echo behind you, sharp and relentless, like hounds on a scent. Dionysus is stumbling alongside, his godly swagger gone, his face pale as the moonlight that's barely cutting through the haze. The grapes pulse with a sickly glow, and the air so thick with that rancid, fermented stench you're gagging. You're not sure where you're running to just away from those frenzied women and their vine-wielding chaos. The vineyard feels alive, its paths twisting to keep you trapped, and you're starting to think this maze wants you lost forever. You skid to a stop at the edge of a shallow stream, its water glinting black under the stars. It's narrow, barely a trickle, but it cuts through the vineyard like a scar, and the vines stop short of its banks, as if they're afraid to touch it. Dionysus pants beside you, his hands on his knees, muttering, this wasn't here before. You're not surprised. Nothing in this place stays put. The stream's surface ripples, but there's no wind, and you swear you see shapes moving under the water faces. Maybe, or just your imagination running wild. You're tempted to cross, but something about the stream feels wrong, like it's not just water, but a trick, another layer of the vineyard's game. You glance at Dionysus, hoping for godly insight, but he's staring at the stream like it's personally insulted him. You're catching your breath when you notice the Maenads. Chants have faded, replaced by the stream's soft gurgle, which is somehow worse. It's too calm, too inviting. You nudge Dionysus, whispering, "Is this the way out?" He shakes his head, his eyes darting to the water. "It's a guide," he says, "but it lies. Great, a lying river." You're about to ask what that means when you spot a vine on the opposite bank, its grapes glowing brighter than the rest, like a neon sign. You point it out, and Dionysus squints, then curses under his breath. "That's the vineyard's bait," he says. You're getting the vibe this stream's less a shortcut and more a trap. But standing still isn't an option with the Maenads out there. Here's a historical fact. Ancient Greeks often linked rivers to divine boundaries in myths, with texts from 500 BCE describing streams as paths to the underworld or godly domains, sometimes tied to Dionysus rituals. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe stories claim Dionysus once fell into a river, all drunk, and emerged on the wrong side of the world, blaming the water for stealing him. Historians still argue whether these tales were about spiritual journeys or just poetic ways to excuse his benders. You're leaning toward benders because the way Dionysus is eyeing this stream, it's like he's expecting it to kidnap him again. You try a joke to ease the tension. Why'd the stream trick Dionysus? It wanted a sip of his wine. He glares, but there's a twitch of a smile, like he's too tired to stay mad. You're both inching along the bank, keeping the stream to your left, but the vines on the other side are swaying, their glowing grapes pulsing like a heartbeat. You're tempted to cross. Maybe the Maenads won't follow, but the water's surface ripples again, and you swear you see your own face staring back, except it's smiling in a way you're not. You step back, heart pounding, and Dionysus grabs your arm, his grip tight. "Don't look too long," he warns. You're not planning to. The path along the stream twists, and you're dodging vines that lean over the water, their leaves dipping in like they're testing it. The fog's thinner here, but it's colder, stinging your skin, and you're shivering in your sandals. Dionysus is muttering about finding the source, but you're not sure if he means the stream or the vineyard's heart. You're just hoping it's not another dead end. You spot a stone in the stream, carved with a faded grape motif, and you're guessing it's another of Dionysus' old markers. You point it out, and he nods, but his face is grim, like he knows something you don't. A sudden splash makes you both freeze. Something moved in the water too big for a fish. You're peering into the stream, your stomach twisting, when the vines across the bank rustle, and a Maenads laugh cuts through the fog. You're running again, the stream guiding you deeper, its lies pulling you along. The vineyard's closing in, and you're wondering if you'll ever see the sky again. You're racing along the stream's edge, your sandals slipping on slick stones, the fog swirling like it's trying to swallow you whole. The vineyard's vines loom on your right, their thorns glinting in the faint moonlight, while the black water gurgles to your left, its surface rippling with shapes that make your skin crawl. Dionysus is beside you, his breath ragged, his eyes darting between the stream and the vines, like he's expecting both to betray him. The Maenads laugh, still lingers in the air, sharp and taunting, but it's fainter now, as if the vineyards decided to mess with you in new ways. The grapes no longer glow, they're dark, heavy, like they're mourning something, and the air's so thick with their sour stench you're choking on it. You're not sure where you're going, but the stream's pulling you deeper, and you're starting to think it's not just a guide, it's a conspirator. You're both slowing, exhaustion creeping in, when Dionysus stops, staring at the sky. The stars are back, but they're dim, flickering like dying embers, and you're wondering if the vineyard's even messing with the cosmos now. He mutters, "They're watching," and you're not sure if he means the stars or the gods, his family, the Olympians, lounging on their cloudy thrones. You can almost imagine them up there, Zeus chuckling into his goblet, Hera rolling her eyes, Athena taking notes like it's a case study, Dionysus' predicament lost in his own vineyard, chased by his own followers, must be the talk of Olympus, a divine soap opera. You're picturing Apollo placing bets on whether you'll make it out, and it's not exactly boosting your confidence. You nudge Dionysus, whispering, "Who's watching?" He shakes his head, his face tight. "All of them," he says, and there's a bitterness in his voice, like he's tired of being the punchline. You're starting to get why he's so rattled. This isn't just about getting lost. It's about proving himself to a family that treats him like the embarrassing cousin who shows up drunk to every reunion. You're dodging vines that lean too close, their leaves brushing your arms like nosy relatives, and you're wondering if Olympus is laughing at you too. You're just a mortal, or whatever you are in this maze, but you're caught in a god's drama, and it's not the fun kind with togas and ambrosia. Here's a historical fact. Dionysus was often portrayed as an outsider in Greek mythology, with texts from 400 BCE showing him as a latecomer to Olympus, grudgingly accepted by gods who saw his wine-fueled worship as chaotic. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe myths claim the Olympians once locked Dionysus in a vineyard to sober him up, only for him to turn it into a maze that trapped Hermes for a week. Historians still argue whether these stories were about divine politics or just ways to explain Dionysus' wild reputation. You're leaning toward politics, because the way Dionysus is glaring at the sky, it's like he's expecting a lightning bolt with Zeus' name on it. You try a joke to lighten the mood. Why's Olympus so nosy? They've got no vines of their own. Dionysus snorts, but it's half-hearted, his eyes still fixed on the stars. You're moving again, the stream narrowing, its water so black it's like liquid shadow. The vines are thinner here, but they're knotted into shapes that look like faces gods, maybe, or just the vineyard's cruel art. You spot one that resembles a smirking Zeus, and you're not telling Dionysus he's edgy enough. The stream bends, and you're sliding down a muddy bank, landing in a patch of vines that feel too warm, like they're alive. Dionysus curses, untangling himself, and you're both scrambling to keep moving. A sudden rustle makes you freeze. It's not the Maenads too soft, too deliberate. You squint into the fog, and there's a figure, tall and shadowy, standing across the stream. It's gone before you can blink, but Dionysus saw it too, his face pale. "They're debating," he whispers, and you're guessing he means the gods, arguing over whether to help or let him stew. You're not sure which is worse. The stream gurgles, almost laughing, and you're wondering if Olympus is running this show or if the vineyard's got its own divine agenda. You're just hoping you're not the collateral damage in their family feud. Asterisk, you're still slogging through this vineyard, the fog so thick it's like wading through a ghost, and the vines are tightening around you, their thorns glinting like they've been waiting for this moment. The stream's still on your left, its black water gurgling with a mocking rhythm, and the air's heavy with a rotting grape stench that's making your stomach churn. Dionysus is beside you, his steps heavy, his face a mix of defiance and dread, like he knows the vineyard's secrets are about to spill. The Olympian's whispers, real or imagined, are still buzzing in his head, and you're feeling the weight of their gaze too, like you're both ants under a divine magnifying glass. The grapes are dull now, no glow, just sagging like they're tired of the game. But you're not fooled. This place is far from done with you. You're weaving through vines that form arches, their leaves woven into patterns that look too deliberate, like someone's been knitting with thorns. Dionysus stops, touching a vine that's twisted into a perfect spiral, and his eyes narrow. "This is it," he says, and you're hoping he means the exit, but his tone says otherwise. You're starting to realize this vineyard isn't just a maze, it's a puzzle, a test, maybe even a punishment. The truth hits you like a sour grape. Dionysus didn't just get lost. He built this place to prove something, to himself, or the gods, or the mortals who left. You're caught in his divine midlife crisis, and the vineyard's the stage for his big reveal. You're not sure you're ready for the curtain call. You're following him through a tunnel of vines. The air colder now, the streams gurgle, fading. The vines part, and you're in a small, circular clearing, the ground carpeted with crushed grapes that stain your sandals red. In the center is a stone altar, ancient, carved with vines and faces, gods, mortals, maybe both. Dionysus kneels, his hands tracing the carvings, and whispers, "This is why." You're piecing it together. This vineyard was never about wine. It was about control, about taming chaos into something sacred. But it backfired, and now you're both trapped in his failed experiment. You're tempted to ask, but his face is so raw, so human, you hold back. You're just hoping this altar doesn't demand a sacrifice, because you're not volunteering. Here's a historical fact. Dionysus worship often centered on sacred spaces like altars, with archaeological finds from 500 BCE showing vineyard sanctuaries where offerings of wine and figs were made. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe myths claim Dionysus hid a secret in his vineyards, a riddle only the worthy could solve, though most who tried ended up drunk or dead. Historians still argue whether these stories were about spiritual enlightenment or just glorified treasure hunts. You're leaning toward enlightenment because the way Dionysus is staring at that altar, it's like he's expecting it to whisper the meaning of life. You try a joke to cut the tension. Why'd Dionysus build a puzzle? He wanted to grape everyone's attention. He doesn't laugh, his eyes locked on the altar, but you catch a faint smirk. You're circling the clearing, the vines rustling like they're gossiping, and you spot a grape on the altar, glowing faintly, like it's daring you to touch it. You're not that dumb, but Dionysus reaches for it, then pulls back, his hand shaking. "It's the heart," he says, and you're guessing he means the vineyard's core, not a love note. You're both frozen, the fog swirling, when a vine shifts, revealing a path leading deeper. You're not sure if it's a way out or a trap, but standing here feels like tempting fate. A sudden hum starts, low and steady, like the vineyard's waking up. The grapes on the vines pulse, and you swear the altar's carvings are moving, their faces shifting from smiles to grimaces. Dionysus stands, his jaw tight, and says, "We're close." You're not sure what close means, but your guts screaming to run. You're nudging him toward the new path, the vines parting like reluctant curtains, and you're wondering if this is the vineyard's secret or just another lie. The hum grows louder, and you're hoping the truth doesn't come with claws. You're plunging deeper into the vineyard, the fog curling around you like a jealous lover, and the vines are no longer just plants, they're a chorus, their leaves rustling in time with that eerie hum that's rattling your bones. The air's sharp with a metallic grape tang, like the vineyard's bleeding secrets, and your head spinning, caught between fear and the pull of whatever lies ahead. Dionysus is leading now, his steps purposeful, his eyes locked on the twisting path that opened from the altar's clearing. His torn tunic flaps like a battle flag, and you're sensing he's not just lost anymore, he's hunting something. Maybe the truth he buried in this maze. You're right behind, your sandals sinking into the sticky earth, and every vine seems to lean closer, whispering doubts you can't quite shake. The path is narrow, the vines forming a tunnel that feels more like a throat, swallowing you whole. You're brushing past grapes that pulse faintly, their glow dim but steady, like they're counting down to something. Dionysus is silent, his earlier muttering gone, and you're wondering if he's finally sobering up or just bracing for what's next. You're still reeling from the altar, those carved faces shifting in the fog, and you're starting to think this vineyard secret isn't just about Dionysus' ego. It's about power, maybe even redemption. You're hoping it doesn't involve you getting turned into a grapevine, because you're not ready to be part of the harvest. You're rounding a bend when you spot a figure ahead, not a Maenad or a god, but a mortal, a farmer, his weathered face lit by a flickering torch. He's old, his back bent like the vines, but his eyes are sharp, glinting with a sly humor that makes you uneasy. Dionysus stops, his face a mix of relief and suspicion, and the farmer raises a hand, his voice rough as gravel. "Lost, are ya, wine god?" he says, and you're stunned nobody's that bold with a deity. You're waiting for Dionysus to smite him, but he just laughs, a tired, broken sound, and you realize this farmer might be the first person tonight who isn't scared of him. You're not sure if that's brave or suicidal, but you're sticking close just in case. Here's a historical fact. Ancient Greek farmers were key to Dionysus worship, tending vineyards for festivals like the Anthesteria around 400 BCE, where wine was both offering and celebration. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe tales claim a mortal farmer once outwitted Dionysus in a vineyard, leading him out for a jug of wine as payment cheeky, not heroic. Historians still argue whether these stories were about human cunning or just ways to poke fun at Dionysus' flaws. You're leaning toward cunning because this farmer's smirk says he's got a plan, and you're hoping it includes getting you out of here. You try a joke to ease the tension. Why'd the farmer help Dionysus? He wanted free drinks. For life. The farmer chuckles, but Dionysus just grunts, his eyes on the torch. You're following now, the farmer leading with a limping gait, his torch casting shadows that make the vines look like they're dancing. He's humming, a low tune that blends with the vineyard's hum, and you're wondering if he's part of this place, like the vines or the stream. He glances back, winking at you, and says, "Keep up, mortal, this ain't no stroll." You're not arguing, but your legs are screaming, and the path's getting steeper, like the vineyard's testing you one last time. The farmer's torch reveals carvings on the vine scrapes, faces, spirals, like the altar, but cruder, older. You're guessing they're markers, but for what? Dionysus notices too, his fingers brushing one, and he whispers, "I forgot these." You're not sure if he means the carvings or the farmer, but you're sensing this mortal knows more than he's letting on. The fog thins, and you catch a glimpse of open sky stars, real ones, not the vineyard's lies. Your heart lifts, but the vines are still close, their grapes pulsing faster, like they're angry you're slipping away. The farmer hums louder, and you're hoping his sly grin means freedom, not another trick. A sudden rustle makes you tense, but it's just a fox darting across the path. The farmer laughs, saying, "Vineyard's full of surprises." You're not laughing, your nerves are shot, and Dionysus looks like he's one surprise away from another tantrum. The path levels out, and you're praying this farmer's your ticket out, because the vineyard's hum is growing, and you're not sticking around to see what it's building to. Asterisk, you're trailing the farmer now, his torch a flickering beacon. In the vineyard's relentless fog, and the vines are thinning, their thorns less eager to snag you, like they're finally bored of the chase. The air's still heavy with that sour grape stench, but it's lighter, cut by a faint breeze that carries the promise of open fields. Dionysus is beside you, his face a mix of relief and wariness, like he's not sure if this mortal's leading you to freedom or another divine prank. The farmer's humming that same low tune, blending with the vineyard's fading hum, and you're starting to think he's more than just a local with a torch, maybe a priest, maybe a trickster, but definitely not your average grape grower. The path's wider, the stars brighter, and you're daring to hope you're almost out, but the vineyard's still watching, its grapes pulsing weakly, like a heartbeat slowing down. You're walking through what feels like the vineyard's edge, where the vines are sparser, tangled with wildflowers that smell like normal earth, not enchanted chaos. The farmer glances back, his sly grin catching the torchlight, and says, "Thought you'd be grape jam by now, wine god." Dionysus snorts, but there's no bite in it. He's too tired, or maybe he's just grateful. You're keeping pace, your legs aching, and you're noticing the carvings on the vines. Those crude grapes and spirals are gone, replaced by plain bark. It's like the vineyard's shedding its secrets, or maybe it's just done playing. With you, you're not complaining, but you're not letting your guard down either. The farmer's leading you toward a rise, the ground sloping upward, and you're hearing distant voices, not maenads, not gods, but mortals, laughing, singing, a kind of noise that means a party. You catch a whiff of roasting meat, wood smoke, and you're realizing it's a festival, probably for Dionysus himself, ironic as that is. He perks up, his eyes glinting, and you're thinking he's about to strut in, like the god he is. But the farmer raises a hand, stopping you both. "Not yet," he says, his voice low. "They gotta earn it." You're not sure if he means the villagers or Dionysus, but you're sensing this festival's the endgame. The reason you've been stumbling through this maze all night. Here's a historical fact. Dionysian festivals, like the Lania around 400 BCE, were massive in ancient Greece, with wine-soaked processions and theater to honor the god, often held at harvest time. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe stories claim Dionysus would crash these festivals incognito, testing mortals' hospitality, and reward or curse them based on their vibe think divine Yelp review. Historians still argue whether these tales were about reinforcing worship or just ways to keep rowdy festival goers in line. You're leaning toward worship, because the way the farmer's eyeing Dionysus, it's like he's grading him for godliness. You try a joke to keep things light. Why's Dionysus late to his own party? Got tangled in his own vines. The farmer chuckles, but Dionysus just rolls his eyes, though you catch a faint smile. You're climbing the rise now, the torch casting long shadows, and the festival sounds are louder drums, flutes, laughter. You spot lights ahead, bonfires dotting a clearing, and silhouettes dancing, raising cups. The vines are gone, replaced by olive trees and open grass, and you're breathing easier, the fog just a memory. The farmer stops, pointing to the festival, and says, "Your stage, wine god." Dionysus hesitates, like he's not sure he's ready to face the crowd, and you're wondering if he's still stung by the village's earlier mockery. You're about to nudge him when the farmer turns to you, his eyes sharp. You too, mortal, join the dance. You're not sure if he's inviting or ordering, but you're too tired to argue. You're following Dionysus toward the fires, the music swelling, and you're catching glimpses of faces villagers. Farmers, kids, all caught in the revelry. They don't notice you yet, but you're feeling the pull, like the festival's a tide you can't resist. The farmer's gone, his torch snuffed out, and you're wondering if he was even real. Dionysus straightens, his godly spark flickering back, and you're hoping this celebration means you're finally free of the vineyard's grip. A cheer erupts as someone spots Dionysus, and you're swept into the crowd, cups thrust into your hands, the wine's sharp, real, not the vineyard's cursed brew, and you're starting to think you've made it. But the stars are still watching, and you're not entirely sure the maze is done with you. You're standing at the edge of the festival, the bonfires crackling, their warmth licking at your skin as the vineyard's chill finally fades. The air hums with laughter, flutes, and the clink of clay cups, all swirling in a chaotic, joyful dance that feels like the opposite of the maze you just escaped. Dionysus is beside you, his torn tunic almost regal now, his eyes catching the firelight with a spark that's half god, half weary traveler. The villagers haven't fully noticed him yet, too caught in their revelry, but you can feel the shift coming, like the air before a storm. The stars above are steady, no longer the vineyard's lying tricks, and the open field smells of earth and wine, not that sour, cursed grape tale. You're clutching a cup someone shoved into your hand, the wine sharp and real, and you're starting to believe you've made it out, though the vineyard's hum still lingers in your bones, a faint reminder it's not entirely done with you. The crowd's a blur of faces, farmers, weavers, kids darting between legs, all swaying too. The drums. You spot a few who might have been among the villagers mocking Dionysus earlier, but now they're raising cups in his name, oblivious to the god in their midst. Dionysus steps forward, and the music falters, heads turning as his presence ripples. Through the festival, someone shouts, "The wine god," and the crowd erupts, surging toward him with cheers and outstretched hands. You're caught in the tide, pushed closer, and you're wondering if this is his victory lap or just another stage in the vineyard's game. He raises a hand, grinning, and the crowd roars louder, but you catch a flicker in his eyes, relief, maybe, or something heavier. You're weaving through the dancers, the wine in your cup sloshing, and you're feeling the pull of the celebration, like it's stitching you back into the world. Dionysus is in his element now, tossing back a cup of wine, his laughter booming as he joins the dance. You're not sure if he's forgotten the vineyard or just pretending, but you're happy to play along. A woman with vine leaves in her hair grabs your arm, spinning you into the circle, and you're stumbling, laughing despite yourself. The music's wild, the fire's blazing, and you're thinking this is what Dionysus wanted all along, a moment where chaos feels like home. Here's a historical fact. The Dionysian festivals, like the city Dionysia in Athens around 500 BCE, were cultural cornerstones, blending wine, theater, and communal worship to honor the god's dual nature as creator and destroyer. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some fringe tales claim Dionysus would bless festivals with a single perfect grape, said to grant visions if eaten, though most who tried just got a bad hangover. Historians still argue whether these festivals were about unity or controlled chaos, a way to channel rebellion without toppling society. You're leaning toward chaos, because the way this crowd's moving, it's like they're one spark away from tearing the field apart. You try a joke to ground yourself. Why's Dionysus the best party guest? He brings the vines and the vibes. A nearby dancer laughs, but you're too caught in the rhythm to care. You're spinning, the stars blurring, and you spot Dionysus in the crowd, his face softer now, like he's found something he lost. You're wondering if the vineyard was his way of wrestling with himself, God, mortal, outcast, king, and if this festival is his answer. You're not asking, though. You're too busy dodging a kid who's tossing grape skins like confetti. Night stretches, the fire's dimming, and you're swaying by a quieter bonfire, your cup empty. Dionysus is nearby, talking to a group of elders, his voice low, almost human. You're catching fragments, something about learning and vines that listen. You're not sure if he means the vineyard or the people, but you're feeling the weight of it all, the maze, the maenads, the farmer's sly grin. You're starting to think this wasn't just about getting lost. It was about finding something, even if you're not sure what. The festival's fading now, the drums softening, the crowd thinning as villagers drift to their homes. You're sitting on the grass, the cool earth grounding you, and the stars are gentle, their light a whisper against the dark. Dionysus is gone, maybe slipped into the night, maybe watching from somewhere you can't see. The air's calm, no fog, no thorns, just the faint scent of wine and wildflowers. You're breathing slower, your eyelids heavy, and the world feels softer, like it's cradling you. The vineyard's hum is gone, replaced by a quiet that wraps you like a blanket, and you're sinking into it, the night folding over you. Let the stars keep their secrets. You're done chasing mazes. Sleep's calling, warm and deep, and you're ready to answer.